John Miller woke before the sun rose. His old alarm clock ticked softly in the quiet farmhouse. He yawned, stretched his arms, and slipped out of bed. The wooden floor felt cool under his feet. He pulled on worn jeans and a faded flannel shirt. Outside, the air smelled of dew and wild grass. His ranch lay still under the pale light. It's not a sound, but the call of a distant bird. John climbed the porch steps and paused, taking a slow breath. He loved mornings here more than anywhere else. He walked down the dirt path to the boathouse. Each step kicked up a little dust. The boathouse was simple weathered wood, a slanted roof, and glass windows that looked out onto the lake. Inside, his fishing boat waited. It was not fancy. The paint had chipped in places. The motor sounded loud when it ran, but John loved it. He rubbed his hand along the rough wood railing and unlocked the door. The smell of oil and old rope greeted him, gave a small smile. John lifted the boat cover carefully and ran his hand over the deck. He remembered the day he found this boat at a yard sale. It needed work, but he saw its promise. Over many weekends, he fixed the motor, replaced ropes, and sanded the wood. Now it was his pride and joy. He climbed in, pulled a rope to the dock, and pushed off. The boat glided over the glassy water. Small ripples spread from the hull. He felt a soft breeze on his face. The sky turned pale gold as dawn broke. He pushed a button, and the motor rumbled to life. The sound felt strong in the morning hush. John steered toward the center of the lake. Tall trees lined the shore, their tops glowing with new light. Held the wheel lightly, feeling free and calm. On these waters, he felt at home. No deadlines, no fuss, no neighbors watching. Just him, the boat, and the lake. He breathed deeply, letting his worries float away. He eased the boat into a small cove on the far side. A plume of mist rose from the water. He cut the motor and sat still. Kingfisher darted across the lake, its bright colors flashing. Fish jumped, breaking the surface in tiny splashes. Dragonflies skimmed above the water. John opened a small cooler and pulled out a sandwich, bread soft and cheese melting slightly. He took a bite and listened. The world felt perfect in that moment. As he ate, he gazed across the lake at his own land. Rolling hills stretched beyond the water. Barbed wire fences marked pastures where cattle grazed. A windmill creaked slowly in the distance. He felt proud of what he had built here. He had worked this land for years. On weekends, he left his busy city job for this ranch. He had bought it in his 30s, dreaming of a quiet life. In his mid-40s, he split his time between office walls and open plains. Today was his day on the lake. He finished his sandwich and reached beside him for his fishing rod. The reel spun easy in his hand. He tied on a lure and cast into the deep water. The line flew in a smooth arc and landed with a soft plop. He waited, rod in hand. His eyes scanned the surface, watching for movement. He thought back to childhood. Summers on his grandfather's pond. He'd learned patience there. Fishing taught him to wait, to watch, to be still. It was a lesson he carried into every part of life. A tug jolted the rod. John sprang to action. He reeled in steadily, feeling the weight of a fish on the line. The fight was quick but strong. We lifted a good base into the boat, admired its silver-green scales, its wide eye watching him. He unhooked it gently and let it slip back into the water. The splash echoed in the cove. He watched the ripples fade. Satisfied, he cast again. This time he closed his eyes and breathed easy. Suddenly a noise drifted across the water. It was faint, but different from birdsong. He opened his eyes. In the distance, on a rise above the lake, he saw a small group of people. They stood near. A white SUV. One woman pointed down at the boat. John frowned. He did not expect strangers here. He eased the boat forward, scanning the shoreline. The figures looked like they had binoculars. He squinted and saw a logo on the SUV door. Cedar Creek HOA. John's chest tightened. HOA stood for Homeowners Association. Their rules often applied only to neighborhood streets and shared fences. His ranch had no shared street, no common fence. The lake lay within his property lines. He felt the first spark of anger, packed away the fishing rod, and started the motor again. The engine's rumble sounded harsh in the still air. As he steered closer, the figures waved him over. He cut the motor near the shore and climbed out, water splashing at his boots. The grass was damp. He approached the SUV. A woman with neat hair and a clipboard stepped forward. She wore a crisp blouse and sensible shoes. She introduced herself as Mrs. Caldwell, HOA president. Her tone was polite but firm. She said someone reported unauthorized boating activity and asked for ID and proof of permission. John blinked. "My ranch," he said, voice steady but puzzled. "My boat, my property." He reached into his pocket and pulled out his ranch deed, rolled tightly, handed it over. Mrs. Caldwell took it, adjusted her glasses, and read. She listened to his explanation that the lake and land were entirely his. She said she understood but insisted on filing a report. 2 deputies men in green uniforms stood by the SUV. They asked for his driver's license and boat registration. John felt his calm morning slip away. He handed over documents. The deputies took them back to their vehicle for a quick check. John watched through the tinted windows as they conferred. He thought of all his weekends on the lake. Quiet mornings like this had filled his soul. He wondered who had complained. A neighbor? A trespasser? The entire ordeal felt wrong. After 20 minutes, the deputies returned. They handed him back his papers. One nodded apologetically. "Everything checks out, sir," he said. "It appears you have full rights. The HOA can't stop you." John offered a tight smile. He thanked them and turned back to Mrs. Caldwell. She closed her notebook and said she would report back to her board. She hinted they might post new signs or boundaries. John nodded. His heart pounded with frustration. He walked back to the boat. He mounted it and drove to the center of the lake. The motor's vibrations felt like pent-up energy. He planned to fish again, but his mind raced. The HOA had no right here. His ranch was private. Yet they had called the cops. He thought of possible fights, expensive lawyers, long court dates. He did not want that. He wanted his peace. He cut the motor again and closed his eyes. He let the boat drift. The wind rustled the leaves. He heard faint laughter from the shore as deputies spoke with HOA members. He used a hand to block the sun from his eyes and looked toward home. Pictured his farmhouse, the red barn, the winding creek. He loved this life. He denied letting petty rules take it all away. He breathed deeply, clutching the side of the boat. Then he steadied his mind. Fighting rules could take years. He needed another way. He thought of the small marina miles away. A place where boats came and went, where people paid fees and followed rules voluntarily. He wondered its owners. Name. He planned to call someone. First he would finish fishing, cast his line one more time, letting hope drift on the water alongside the lure. John climbed out of his boat and stood on the dock with his rod still in hand. He looked back at the lake where he had spent peaceful hours. The deputies had gone, and Mrs. Caldwell had driven off in her SUV. Yet the worry in John's chest would not fade. He shook his head and dropped his rod into the boat. It bounced against the seat. He climbed back in and pushed off toward shore. Each time the hole hit the water, his mind spun with questions. What would come next? Would the HOA post signs, send letters, threaten him with fines? He did not know. But he did know one thing. He would not let this go on. He beached the boat at the small ramp and climbed onto land. His boots sank slightly into mud and grass. He felt the cold dampness through his soles. He walked up the hill toward his farmhouse. The sun climbed higher, casting warm light on the fields. His cattle grazed quietly. Beyond the fence lay his barn, sturdy and red. The sight of it normally made him feel safe. Today it did not. Today it felt like walls trapping him in a fight he did not want. Inside the farmhouse, John rinsed his face in the kitchen sink. The cool water cleared some tension. He stared at his own eyes in the window reflection. He studied his face, saw lines of stress around his eyes. He breathed out and rolled up his sleeves. He poured coffee into a chipped mug and sat at the wooden table. He placed his deed and boat registration before him. He turned the pages and felt the weight of paper. This paper said he owned the lake. But paper did not scare Anne. HOA. He took another sip of coffee and leaned back. He remembered the day he bought the ranch. He had driven for hours, following a winding road through cedar trees and rocky hills. He saw a for sale sign faded by sun and rain, stopped, climbed out of his car, and stepped onto the land. He felt the breeze and smelled earth. Spoke with the seller, signed papers, and took keys. That moment had been freedom. Now he felt tied down by rules he never asked for. He reached for his phone and tapped the contacts list. He scrolled until he found the number for his old friend Bill Carlson, a real estate broker in the nearby town of Hillcrest. Bill had helped him buy the ranch. He knew the land's value and the sellers. John tapped Bill's name and waited. The line rang twice, then clicked. "John, good to hear from you," Bill said. His voice was bright, cheery. "Bill, I need your help," John said. "I own a lake on my ranch, but the HOA just called the cops on me. They say I can't boat. There, I need a plan B." There was a pause on the line. John heard birds chirp at Bill's end. Then Bill spoke. "An HOA called the cops on their own lake? That's new. HOA down here barely knows how to write a letter. What's really going on?" John sighed. "They say I broke their rules, even though the lake is inside my deed. I want to push back, but I don't want a big legal fight. I want leverage." Bill whistled softly. "Leverage. I like that word. Let me more." John explained exactly what happened at the lake. How Mrs. Caldwell came with deputies. How they checked his deed. How they hinted at posting signs. "I thought maybe I'd buy the marina they want. The one down on Cedar Creek. It's small. Heard it's for sale." There was another pause. Then Bill said, "That's bold. Really bold. But you know me. Can find the numbers. I'll check the listing. If it's still available, I'll send you the details. Do you want an address? And price? I'll text it in 5. John sat up straighter. He felt a flicker of excitement. "Thanks, Bill. I want all the info you can get." "I may drive down today on it, partner," Bill said. "Talk soon." The line clicked off. John put down his phone and ran a hand through his hair. He looked out the window at the fields. He felt a light breeze on his cheek. He stood, poured more coffee, and filled a metal thermos. Then he gathered his documents, his deed, the boat papers, a list of equipment on the ranch, and some bank statements. He folded them into a folder and tucked it into his jacket. He zipped it closed and patted his hip pocket to make sure his phone was there. He stepped outside and locked the farmhouse door. He walked to his pickup truck, parked under a wide oak tree. He climbed into the driver's seat and turned the key. The engine growled. He let it idle for a moment.
Ow.
He grabbed a travel mug of coffee and took a sip. The hot liquid warmed his tongue. He felt ready. He pulled out onto the dirt road, leading away from his ranch. The dust rose behind him. He kept the headlights off. It was still bright morning. He watched the yellow lines of the highway appear ahead. His mind went over the details. He needed to see the marina, talk with the owner, and figure a price. He would not waste time. This was not a vacation. It was a mission. The drive took him over rolling hills and through small towns. He passed a country store where locals gathered for gossip and coffee. He waved as he drove by. Beyond that, the road grew narrower and rocky. He switched on cruise control and let the miles pass under his tires. He thought of his ranch lake, quiet and private. He thought of Mrs. Caldwell and her letters. He thought of control. He hated it when someone else decided what he could do. On his own land, if they wanted influence, he would give them something real. After nearly 2 hours, he saw a sign. Cedar Creek Marina, 1 mile. He turned onto a gravel drive that led through cottonwood trees. The air smelled like pine and water. The breeze carried a hint of gasoline from boats. The marina came into view, a cluster of docks, a small office building, and a row of metal storage sheds. A few boats bobbed on the water. Some slip holders were there, washing decks or chatting. He slowed to a crawl and studied the scene. He parked in front of the office building. It had peeling paint and a sagging front porch. A faded sign above the door read Cedar Creek Marina. He stepped out, his boots clicking on gravel. He checked his phone. Bill's text appeared with a name, owner Frank Hayes, phone 555-2390, asking price $250,000 for land, docks and equipment. John stared at the screen. It was more than he expected. Still, for something that ran itself, it was worth it. He thought of the cash he had in savings. He could finance part, pay cash for the rest. He could handle a loan. He walked to the office porch and knocked on the door. A man inside shouted, "Come in." John opened the door. The office smelled of coffee and bleach. Two desks sat near a window. Stacks of paperwork lay neatly on one desk. A pot of coffee sat on a small table. A friendly man in his 50s looked up. He had kind eyes, a gray mustache, and a faded baseball cap. He stood and extended his hand. "Frank Hayes," he said. "It must be John. Bill called me." John shook his hand. "Thanks for seeing me, Frank." He held out his folder. "I want to talk purchase." Frank smiled. "Good. I want to retire. I've owned this place 20 years. I'm tired of bookkeeping, maintenance. I'm ready to go." John followed him to the desk. He sat and opened his folder. He laid out a check for earnest money, pre-approved by his bank. He explained his ranch, his vision for the marina, and why he wanted to close quickly. Frank listened, nodding. John saw relief in his eyes. Frank turned to his phone and dialed his lawyer, said, "I have a buyer." He named John and the price. His lawyer confirmed paperwork and legal documents. Within 20 minutes, they shook hands on the sale. John signed papers, paid the deposit, and took keys to the docks. He thanked Frank. Frank said, "You're a good man. I like to know this place goes to someone who cares." John nodded, smiling, stepped outside into the bright sun. He looked at the docks, the boats, the clear water. He felt a rush of victory. He grabbed his phone and texted Bill. "Deal done." "I'm the new owner," Bill replied quickly. "Congratulations, you did it." John smiled and pocketed his phone, climbed back into his truck, the folder lighter without papers. He started the engine. He felt a thrill. He had turned anger into action. He owned the marina now. He was no longer the man threatened by rules. He was the man who made the rules. As he drove back toward home, he pictured how he would greet Mrs. Lee Caldwell. He imagined the look on her face when she learned the news. He felt at peace again. He felt free, felt ready to reshape his world. John drove the long road back to his ranch, the setting sun painting the sky in pink and gold. He turned off his phone's navigation, enjoying the quiet hum of the engine. His heart still thumped with excitement from the marina purchase. Thought of Mrs. Caldwell and her HOA board. He wondered how they would react when they learned he now owned the very place they tried to control. He felt a calm sense of power mixed with relief. He had taken back his freedom. When he reached the farmhouse, the porch light glowed softly. He climbed out of the truck, carrying the folder with final sale papers. He paused on the wooden steps and looked across the fields. His cattle were grazing in the fading light. The windmill creaked its steady song. The lake lay still, reflecting the sky. He felt at home again, stepped inside, setting the folder on the kitchen table. He poured a glass of water and sank into a chair, letting his mind unwind, when a thought of the Marina's uneven docks, the chipped sign, and the friendly faces of slip holders. He remembered Frank Hayes' kind eyes and firm handshake. He realized he had taken on more than a piece of land. He had taken on a community. He owed it to them to keep the marina alive and growing. They, in turn, had helped him see a path through his fight with the HOA. He knew he had to honor that trust. John pulled out his laptop. He opened an email draft addressed to Mrs. Caldwell and the HOA board members. He paused. He did not want to write a rude letter. He wanted to be fair. He began. "Dear Mrs. Caldwell and board members, I hope this message finds you well. I want to let you know that I have purchased Cedar Creek Marina. I look forward to working with you." He added a few lines about inviting them to a small celebration at the marina next weekend. He closed with, "Sincerely, John Miller. He read it over, satisfied. He clicked send. The next morning, John walked to the mailbox at the end of his drive. The air was cool and fresh. Pulled out letters and bills, then noticed an extra envelope with a HOA logo. He opened it carefully. Inside was a formal invitation to a board meeting scheduled for Thursday evening at the community center. The subject line read, "Discussion on Marina ownership and community use." He smiled. His invitation had already stirred action. Felt ready. On Thursday, John drove his pickup to the community center. Inside, folding chairs formed a half circle around a long table. Mrs. Caldwell sat at the head, her hair neatly pinned back. Two other board members, a man in a pressed shirt and a woman with glasses, sat next to her. John greeted them with a nod and offered water bottles. He took a seat at the table. The air felt tense but polite. Mrs. Caldwell cleared her throat. "Mr. Miller, thank you for coming. We received your email and invitation. We wanted to meet and discuss how Marina ownership might affect our HOA guidelines." She spoke slowly, as if testing her words. John met her gaze and smiled. "Thank you for the meeting," he said. "I want the marina and the lake to work in harmony. I know you care about the community. I care too, so I'd like to share my plans." He pulled out a small notebook and passed copies of a simple plan sheet. On it, he had drawn maps of both lakes, marked boat routes, and noted basic rules: quiet hours, waste disposal points, and safety signs. I pointed at the marina area. "Want to improve the docks, add life jackets for rent, and keep the water clean. I also want to open up part of my private lake to slip holders who belong to the marina. That way you have more space, and I can offset maintenance costs." The man in the pressed shirt leaned forward. "You mean our HOA members could dock at your lake?" he asked. John nodded. "It's at a small fee. You'd have privacy and extra room. I'll build a simple dock on my side. I'll handle all liability and maintenance. You just sign an agreement with the marina." He tapped the plan sheet. "This keeps your HOA rules clear. My rules are clear. Everyone knows where to go." Mrs. Caldwell raised an eyebrow. "And what about our original boarders? Some of our members live close to your lake." John smiled gently. "Your borders stay the same. I'm not asking to change any property lines. I just offer a private docking spot for marina members. It is voluntary. No one has to use it." He folded his hands. "I believe in choice." The woman with glasses flipped through the map. "This is quite thoughtful," she said. "We've had complaints about crowding at the marina in high season. This could reduce noise for my neighbors on the hill." She glanced at Mrs. Caldwell. "It seems fair." After 15 minutes of questions about insurance, safety, and fees, the board leaned back. Mrs. Caldwell cleared her throat again. "Mr. Miller, we appreciate your proposal and invitation. We will discuss among ourselves and reply formally. Thank you." She gathered papers and stood. The meeting ended. John left feeling hopeful. He drove back to the ranch, eager to begin improvements. Over the next week, he visited a lumber yard and ordered treated wood for docks. He hired a local welder to fix rusty cleats, bought life jackets, anchored buoys, and ordered trash bins. With lids, he spent evenings working under a bright work light and weekends testing each piece for safety. He posted simple signs: Marina dock, private lake dock, quiet hours, 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. He painted them in clear, bold letters. On Saturday morning, he held a small opening for HOA members at his lake dock. He hung string lights and set out coolers of lemonade. He greeted each person by name. Having collected a list from the HOA, boaters stepped onto the dock, marveling at the calm water and peaceful trees. One old man said, "This is better than fishing at the marina. No crowd, just nature." A couple laughed as they paddled a kayak. Children threw bread to ducks dancing on the water's edge. John watched with pride as families found joy here. He spotted Mrs. Caldwell by the shore, holding her tablet. She waved at him. He walked over. "How is it?" he asked. She smiled. "I didn't expect this. It's lovely. My husband will bring his pontoon here next week." She paused, then added, "You've done a good thing, John." He nodded, grateful. As the sun climbed, he saw deputies from the previous visit drive by. They smiled and gave him thumbs up. John realized that no one saw him as an intruder now. He had shifted from defendant to host. He felt a soft warmth in his chest. By afternoon, the Marina office called. Frank's lawyer said the final papers were ready. John knew the sale was complete. He leaned back under an oak tree and closed his eyes. He thought of his ranch lake, the Marina docks, and the faces of neighbors. He felt peace and balanced power, used for good, freedom shared rather than fought over. He opened his eyes and saw a child bend down, offering him a handful of wildflowers picked by the water. He smiled, accepted them, and placed them in his shirt pocket. He climbed to his feet and helped a family load their boat onto a trailer. He gave directions back to the highway and wished them a safe trip. When the last boat left, he locked the dock gate and switched off the lights. He walked back to his pickup carrying his tools. The sky glowed in the last light of day. He climbed in, started the engine, and drove home quietly. As he passed the mailbox, he saw another HOA envelope. He ignored it and carried on. Inside his heart, he knew that real life was not about rules or fences. It was about making room for others and standing up for what you own. And in that, he had found something richer than any lake or marina could give. John arrived early at the marina one crisp morning. Mist hovered over the water like a soft blanket. He unlocked the office door and switched on the lights. He listened to the hum of the heater and the distant call of a loon. He drank strong coffee as he checked his schedule. Today, several boat owners planned to bring friends and family for a weekend on the water. John felt a familiar thrill seeing people enjoy what he built. He stepped outside, inhaling the fresh air. He walked along the docks, inspecting each cleat and plank. He tapped wood to test for rot, tightened loose bolts, and swept away fallen leaves. He paused beside a new floating dock he had installed just the week before. It bobbed gently under. His hand, he smiled at its solid feel. This dock meant extra slips and more happy boaters. He pictured families arriving later to tie up here, laughing as they climbed on board. As the sun rose higher, a small crowd gathered by the office. A young father carried his daughter on his shoulders. A group of friends carried coolers full of snacks and drinks. One couple carried fishing gear. They greeted John warmly, thanking him for the new life jackets and clear signs. John shook each hand and answered questions. "Yes, the picnic tables go in next week," he said. "Yes, the pump-out station works fine," he pointed out a map of the lake and explained safe zones and speed limits. As he spoke, he saw grateful faces light up with relief. He felt proud. He paused when he spotted a familiar black SUV parked near the entrance. His heart skipped. Mrs. Caldwell and two board members stepped out, dressed in smart casual clothes. They waved at him. John waved back, noticing they carried clipboards and wore serious expressions. He swallowed. He had hoped this meeting would come later after he proved the Marina success. But he was ready. He decided to greet them. At the office, he walked over, nodding respectfully. "Good morning," he said. "Welcome back." Mrs. Caldwell folded her arms. "Good morning, Mr. Miller. We wanted to observe operations for ourselves before finalizing our agreement. We appreciate your invitation." John gestured toward a bench. "Please have a seat. I'll get you coffee." He returned with cups and set them on the bench's armrest. They thanked him politely. Then he unfolded his hands and waited. The man in glasses spoke first. "We've seen slip holders come and go. The docks look good, but we're still concerned about noise on weekends. Our members on the hill say they can hear motors from our homes." John nodded gravely. "I understand. That's why we set a 10 miles per hour speed limit within 50 yards of shore. I'll reinforce the rule with a speed sensor and a sign by the shore. We can post a gentle reminder on the Marina's website, too." Mrs. Caldwell tapped her clipboard. "And what about lighting? After dusk, some lights stay on late. It disturbs wildlife and our night sky." She glanced upward at the solar-powered lamps along the docks. John looked toward the lamps, admitted to himself that he had placed them too close together. He said, "You're right. I'll change those two motion-activated lights and reduce their brightness. That way people can see safely, but we won't light the whole lake all night." She nodded slowly. That would help. She scribbled notes. Then the woman in the pressed shirt spoke. One more thing. Our board reviewed environmental assessments. They worry about fuel spills near the launch ramp. Have you considered adding a spill kit station and a containment barrier? John felt a pinch of guilt. He had focused on docks and docks only. He had not yet installed a spill kit. He said, "Thank you for pointing that out. I'll set up an oil-absorbent pad station by the ramp. I'll also train my staff to handle spills properly and post instructions." She smiled faintly. "That should calm our members." She looked at Mrs. Caldwell. "Shall we reconvene next week for a formal vote on the agreement?" Mrs. Caldwell closed her notebook. "Yes, thank you, Mr. Miller. We see you care." She stood. Her colleagues followed. They walked back to their SUV without another word. John watched them go, noting their polite but distant manner. He hoped his changes would satisfy them. After they left, John stayed by the docks. He sipped coffee, his mind buzzing with tasks. He needed to order speed sensors, hire an electrician for the lights, and stock spill kits. He made a quick list on his phone and tapped Remind Me. He felt the weight of responsibility, but welcomed it. He had not just bought property, he had taken on a role in the community. He spent the rest of the day organizing. He placed extra life jackets in clear bins, checked fire extinguishers, and cleaned the restrooms. He even adjusted the water fountain's flow so it did not splatter muddy water. By afternoon, he felt satisfied. He closed the office and turned off lights. He leaned against the doorway and watched the last slip owner motor away. He felt the lake's peace again. That evening, John returned to his ranch. The sky glowed purple. Above the barn, he parked under the oak tree and climbed out. He grabbed his fishing rod and headed to his private lake. He needed time to think away from invoices and checklists. He shoved off in his boat and let it drift. The gentle waves lulled his thoughts. He thought back to the morning's visit. He felt a mix of relief and anxiety. He had met each concern with a solution, but he knew the HOA might demand more. He reminded himself. This was his lake, his ranch. Yet he wanted harmony, not conflict. He breathed deep air scented by pine. He cast his line and waited. A fish tugged on his lure, and he reeled it in. He caught a small bass, admired its sleek body, and put it back. He closed his eyes and let the late sun warm his face. He remembered why he did this. It was not just for profit or power. It was for freedom and shared joy. He thought of families, laughing on the docks, and children chasing dragonflies at the water's edge. He thought of young couples paddling and old men fishing in silence. He thought of neighbors, once suspicious, now curious. He opened his eyes and watched a heron wade near the shore. Its long legs stepped carefully in shallow water. It pecked at fish. John felt awe. This lake was alive, full of wonder. He whispered, "I won't let them spoil it." The next morning, he met with an electrician. They studied the lighting plan and agreed on dimmers and motion sensors. He called a supplier and ordered speed sensors that could flash a soft green light when boats slowed. He signed a purchase order for spill kits, pads, and instructions. He emailed his Marina staff with new duties and schedules. On Saturday, he returned to the Marina for a test. He watched boats approach the ramp and saw his staff place a grate and an absorbent pad. He saw new signs reminding boaters to go slow. He watched a visitor trigger a motion light and saw it shine briefly before fading. He heard a neighbor's boat pass quietly, its motor low. John felt pleased. He walked the docks, greeting people. One boater said, "You're making it better." Every day. Another said, "I like the spill station. It looks like you care." He thanked them sincerely. He thought of Mrs. Caldwell's kind words. "We see you care." Late that afternoon, a black SUV rolled in. He recognized Mrs. Caldwell and her board members. They stepped out, this time smiling. Mrs. Caldwell walked up and offered her hand. "John, your changes make a real difference. I think we can finalize our agreement." John grinned and shook her hand. "I'm glad. I want this to work for everyone." She nodded. "Let's sign." They moved to the office table. John opened a fresh page of agreements. He handed her a pen. She signed first, then her board members. He signed last. They shook hands, sealing a new partnership. John felt a rush of triumph. He had turned a fight into friendship. He had taken control not by force, but by listening and acting. I had built trust where there was doubt. He had shown what a true owner does. Cares for land, cares for people, and cares for shared dreams. As the sun dipped low, John walked to the edge of the dock with Mrs. Caldwell. They watched the water glow orange. Neighbors waved from their boats. Children called out greetings. The lake felt peaceful and full of promise. John stood tall and whispered to himself, "This is just the beginning." He knew Part 5 would bring its own moments, perhaps, Celebration, perhaps unforeseen challenges. But for now, he savored a quiet victory at sunset on a lake he loved, surrounded by people who now felt like friends. John woke early again, though today felt different. The air smelled of wet grass and fresh beginnings. He dressed quickly and walked outside barefoot, feeling the cool earth under his feet. The sky above the lake was streaked with soft pinks and blues. He paused on the porch, breathing deeply. This day marked the end of one journey and the start of another. He stepped toward the barn to fetch his fishing gear. His mind drifted to the past weeks, a private morning nearly spoiled by rules, a bold decision to buy a marina in one afternoon, careful meetings with HOA leaders, and the small victories that followed each conversation. He realized how much he had learned. Listening mattered as much as speaking. Kindness could guide change. When you own something precious, you protect it with open heart, not closed fists. At the dock, his boat waited patiently. The water lay glassy, reflecting every cloud. He climbed aboard, secured his rod, and eased into the center of the lake. The motor's hum felt like a gentle heartbeat. He cut the engine and let the craft drift. He gazed at the new floating platform he'd added for kayak rentals. It bobbed softly, ready for friends to explore hidden coves. He felt a swell of pride, cast his line and watched the float drift away. The lure landed with a tiny splash. He rested his chin on his hands, eyes half closed. He thought of the ribbon-cutting ceremony scheduled for later, when he would officially open the lakeside community center he planned to build. Pictured neighbors gathering, sharing stories, laughing under string lights. He missed the gentle chaos of friendly crowds. A tug snapped him from memory. He reeled in, a bass strong and shiny. He unhooked it and released it, watching it dart back into shadow. A heron landed nearby, and he held still so as not to disturb it. Its gray feathers flickered in morning light, smiled and whispered, "We're all home now." He steered back toward shore, heart light. He climbed onto the dock and carried his rod up the path to the small picnic area. There, under a canopy of oaks, tables bore platters of pastries, fresh fruit, and cool drinks. Early helpers buzzed around, setting out chairs and hanging balloons. A banner read, "Welcome to Cedar Creek Community Day." The sight warmed John's chest. He greeted his staff and volunteers. He thanked each one for their hard work. Teenage helper said, "Mr. Miller, you've changed the place. People feel happy here." John ruffled the boy's hair and nodded. "That's the goal." More neighbors arrived. Marina slip holders, ranch friends, HOA families. Mrs. Caldwell appeared with her husband, carrying a cake decorated like a boat. She smiled at John and said, "Thank you for bringing us together." He thanked her in return, recognizing how far they had come from suspicion to partnership. Children ran between tables, playing tag. An old man sat in a folding chair, fishing, pole in hand, smiling at passersby. A young couple paddled a kayak, waving as they passed. The sound of laughter and water lapping against docks filled the air. John felt a warmth spread through him. He realized his dream was no longer just about having property. It was about creating a place where people belonged. At the center of the table stood a raised platform with 2 chairs. John climbed up and tapped a glass to gather attention. Murmurs quieted into respectful silence. He cleared his throat and began in simple words. "Thank you all for coming. When I bought this marina, I didn't know just how much it would teach me. A fight over rules on my private lake showed me that community is stronger than conflict. Today isn't just about property lines or boat slips. It's about sharing this beautiful land and water so we all can enjoy it together. Paused and looked at faces shining with anticipation. I promise to care for this place, to listen to your concerns, and to work with the HOA so that both lakes remain safe, clean, and welcoming. To show my thanks, the first hour of kayak rentals. It's free today, and we'll have guided fishing lessons every weekend. Applause broke out, smiled, and stepped down. Mrs. Caldwell joined him and held up her knife. And now, let us cut the ribbon on our new community center. They walked together to a small wooden building by the shore. A red ribbon stretched. Across its doorway, neighbors gathered close. Now John and Mrs. Caldwell gripped each end. At the count of 3, they cut. A cheer rose. They entered the Centera simple space, with windows overlooking both lakes, tables inside, and a small kitchenette. Sunlight poured in. Children pressed their faces against glass, pointing at boats. Neighbors congratulated each other. Outside, volunteers guided families toward picnic tables and a barbecue grill. Smoky aromas mixed with the scent of pine. A live string quartet, members from the HOA, played soft music under a tent. John noticed Mr. Patel, the HOA treasurer, tapping his foot and smiling. He raised a hand in greeting. Mr. Patel waved back, eyes bright. John wandered to the Marina docks, watching boaters tie up and disembark. He helped an older couple balance on the dock, offering a steady hand. "You two have fun," he said. "I'll secure your boat." They thanked him. He moved on to help a mother lift her toddler into a canoe. He saw small acts of trust everywhere. People offering to take photos, shared snacks, borrowed life jackets. He knew each moment built the bond he'd wanted from the start. As afternoon passed into evening, lanterns flickered on. The sky deepened to a purple hue. Families gathered around a fire pit by the lake's edge. Someone handed John a mug of hot cider. He sipped, savoring the warmth. He listened to neighbors share stories, first fishing trips at the lake, memories of sunsets over the barn, tales of wild turkeys wading through the pasture. He realized he had created something far richer than a place to dock boats. He had created memories. Later, Mrs. Caldwell approached him again. This time her expression was soft. "John, I want to apologize for the hard way we began. We questioned you, we challenged you, but you showed patience, respect, and action. You've become a true steward of this land and a friend to our community." He shook his head gently. "No apology needed. I'm glad we met at the table. I learned from you, too. You taught me that rules matter only when we all agree on what's fair." She nodded and placed a gentle hand on his arm. "Here's to fairness and friendship." They clinked cider mugs. As night settled, John walked back to his ranch lake under a sky filled with stars. He closed his eyes, listening to crickets and the faint lapping of water. The moon shone on both lakes, linking them in silver light. He thought of the long road he had traveled: anger, strategy, partnership, celebration. He realized he had found something unexpected: peace in cooperation. He sat on his private dock, legs dangling over the edge. His boat bobbed next to him, glanced at the community center lights in the distance, glowing softly through trees. He smiled and whispered to the night, "This is home." He sat for a long time, letting the quiet wash over him. He knew tomorrow would bring new tasks, maintenance schedules, meeting notes, new ideas from neighbors. But for now, he allowed himself to rest. He felt gratitude for challenges that led to growth, for neighbors who became friends, for water that connected them all. He felt the full weight of ownership, not as a title, but as responsibility and joy. Finally, he stood and stretched, looking at his reflection on the dark water's surface. He saw a man who once feared losing freedom. Now secure in his place and purpose, he whispered, "Thank you, Cedar Creek," and slowly walked back up to the farmhouse. Inside, he found a note on the kitchen table, a simple drawing by his niece, who had visited earlier, of two lakes joined by a heart. Underneath, in childlike scrawl, "Love where we live." He placed it on the fridge, smiling. He turned off the lights and climbed the stairs to bed, heart full. As he drifted to sleep, he dreamed of mornings yet to come. boat rides at dawn, laughter under oaks, starry nights by the fire. He knew life would continue with its share of surprises. But he also knew that when people come together with respect and shared purpose, a simple lake can become a home for many hearts. And in that, he found his greatest victory.